The beeping sound came again. That awful sharp beep that made everyone in line turn and stare. Claire felt her face getting hot as the cashier looked at her with that expression she'd seen too many times lately. The kind of look that was trying to be nice but really just made everything worse. "I'm sorry, ma'am. It's been declined again. Do you have another card?" Claire's hands were shaking as she dug through her wallet, even though she knew there was nothing else in there, just the one credit card that apparently didn't work anymore, $17 in cash, and a bunch of expired coupons she kept forgetting to throw away. The total on the screen glared at her. $63.12. A week's worth of groceries for her and her daughter. Nothing fancy, just the basics. Can you try it one more time? Her voice came out smaller than she meant it to. The cashier nodded, her smile tight and professional. She swiped the card again. Another beep. Claire wanted the floor to open up and swallow her whole. Behind her, she could hear people shifting their weight, sighing, probably checking their phones and wondering why the line wasn't moving. "I'm really sorry," the cashier said again. Claire stared at the bags of groceries already packed and sitting there on the counter. A week ago, $63 wouldn't have been a problem. But then the landlord had raised the rent by $200 with barely any notice. Then her daughter Mia's school had sent home a form about some field trip that cost $45. Then the car had started making that grinding noise that meant she probably needed new brakes soon, and her paycheck from the tech company where she worked in the call center didn't stretch far enough to cover all of it. She started pulling items out of the bags with shaking hands. The chicken breast went first. Then the bag of apples, the yogurt Mia liked. She kept the pasta, the jar of sauce, the eggs, and the loaf of bread. The cashier scanned the returns without saying anything, and Claire was grateful for that at least. "Okay, try it now with just these," Claire whispered. The cashier rang up the remaining items. $21.37. She swiped the card. Another beep. Declined. Claire's eyes started burning. She was not going to cry in the middle of a grocery store. She was not going to do that. She'd figure something out. She always did. Maybe she could call her sister, but Kelly had already lent her money last month. Maybe she could... Excuse me. A deep voice came from behind her. "Use this." Claire turned around and nearly dropped her wallet. Standing in line behind her, holding out a black credit card, was the CEO of her company. She'd only seen him twice in the 3 years she'd worked there. Once during the company-wide meeting when he'd announced some big expansion, and once when he'd walked through the call center with a bunch of executives. Everyone had straightened up in their cubicles that day, trying to look busy and important. His name was Daniel Hartley, and according to the company website, he was 39 years old and had built his tech company from nothing into something worth billions. He was tall, always wore expensive suits, and had this intense way of looking at people like he was calculating something in his head. "I can't," Claire stammered. "I couldn't possibly." "You can and you will." He stepped forward and handed the card directly to the cashier. "Ring up everything, all of it. Whatever she took out, put it back in." The cashier looked between them, clearly unsure what to do. Claire felt her face burning even hotter now. This was so much worse than just having her card declined. This was her boss watching her fail at something as basic as buying groceries. "Please," Daniel said to the cashier, his tone making it clear it wasn't really a request. The cashier started scanning the returned items back in. The chicken, the apples, the yogurt. She even added a few things Claire had been looking at earlier, but decided she couldn't afford. Within 2 minutes, all the bags were packed again and Daniel's card had been charged. "Sir, you really didn't have to..." Claire started. "It's done," he said simply. He took his card back from the cashier and put it in his wallet. Then he looked at Claire, really looked at her for what felt like the first time. "We work at the same company. I was behind you in line. I helped out. That's all this is." But it wasn't all it was, and they both knew it. This was her billionaire boss paying for her groceries because she was too broke to afford food. This was mortifying on a level Claire didn't even know existed. "Thank you," she managed to say, grabbing her bags. "I'll pay you back. I promise. I'll bring cash to the office on Monday. Don't worry about it." He picked up his own basket, which had just a few items in it. Medicine, it looked like. "Consider us even." "Even? How were they even?" She didn't have anything he needed. But she didn't argue. She just nodded, grabbed her groceries, and walked out of that store as fast as she could without actually running. The whole drive home, Claire's mind was racing. She kept replaying the scene over and over. The beeping, the declined card, the way everyone had stared. And then Daniel Hartley, of all people, stepping in to save the day like some kind of hero from a movie. Except this wasn't a movie. This was her actual life, and it was falling apart. When she got home to their small apartment, Mia was on the couch watching cartoons. She was 8 years old and had her mother's dark hair and her father's smile. Not that Claire thought about her ex-husband much anymore. He'd left when Mia was 2, and they'd been on their own ever since. "Mom, did you get the strawberry yogurt?" Mia called out. "I got it, sweetie." Claire carried the bags into their tiny kitchen and started putting things away. Her hands had finally stopped shaking. "Why's your face all red?" Mia appeared in the doorway, curious. "Just hot outside," Claire lied. She wasn't going to tell her 8-year-old daughter that she'd just experienced one of the most embarrassing moments of her adult life. That their finances were so tight she couldn't even buy groceries. That her boss had witnessed the whole thing. That night, after Mia was asleep, Claire sat at their kitchen table with her laptop and looked up Daniel Hartley. She didn't know why. Maybe she wanted to understand who this person was who'd just done something so unexpectedly kind. The internet told her he was worth about $2 billion. He'd started his company 12 years ago in a garage, which seemed like a cliché but was apparently true. He'd been married once but was divorced now. No kids. He was known for working crazy hours and being demanding but fair with employees. There were photos of him at fancy events, always in a suit, always with that same intense expression. He didn't smile much in pictures. In one article, a former employee called him brilliant but difficult. In another, someone said he was the smartest person they'd ever worked for but also the most intimidating. Claire closed her laptop and put her head in her hands. Monday morning was going to be so awkward. She worked on the 3rd floor in a cubicle that was identical to 50 other cubicles, answering customer service calls about software problems. He worked on the 5th floor in what she assumed was a huge corner office. Their paths never crossed. Until tonight, he probably didn't even know she existed, but now he knew. He knew she was broke. He knew she couldn't afford groceries. He knew she was struggling. And there was nothing she could do about it except show up to work on Monday and hope he'd already forgotten. The whole thing. She had $63 worth of groceries in her fridge that said he probably wouldn't forget. Monday morning came too fast. Claire had barely slept, kept waking up thinking about what had happened at the grocery store. She'd put the $63 in cash in an envelope with a note that just said thank you, because she didn't know what else to write. The plan was to leave it with the receptionist on the 5th floor during her lunch break and hope she never had to talk about it again. She got to work at 8:30 like always, logged into her computer, put on her headset, and started taking calls. Software problems, password resets, angry customers who couldn't figure out why their programs weren't working. It was mind-numbing work, but it paid the bills. Barely. Around 10 o'clock, her supervisor, Angela, came by her cubicle. "Claire, can you come with me for a minute?" Claire's stomach dropped. This was it. She was getting fired. Daniel Hartley had probably sent down some memo about how employees who can't manage their personal finances shouldn't work for his company. "Am I in trouble?" she asked, following Angela through the maze of cubicles. "What? No, why would you be in trouble?" Angela looked genuinely confused. "You're one of our best reps. Someone from HR just needs to see you." HR, that was almost worse than getting fired directly. Claire's mind raced through possibilities as they walked to the elevators. Angela pressed the button for the 5th floor. The 5th floor? I thought HR was on 2. They are, but the meeting's up here. Angela wouldn't look at her. The elevator ride felt like it took forever. When the doors opened, Claire stepped out into a completely different world from the call center. The 5th floor had actual art on the walls. Real plants, not plastic ones. Carpet that looked expensive. Floor-to-ceiling windows with views of the city. This was where the executives worked. The people who made actual decisions and didn't spend their days in cubicles. Angela led her past several offices to a door at the end of the hall. She knocked once and then opened it without waiting for an answer. "She's here, Mr. Hartley." Claire froze. This wasn't HR, this was his office. Daniel Hartley stood up from behind a massive desk that probably cost more than her car. He was in a dark suit again, no tie this time, looking exactly like someone who belonged in an office like this. "Thank you, Angela. You can go." His voice was calm and professional, Angela left, closing the door behind her. Claire stood there holding her purse with the envelope of cash inside, feeling completely out of place. The office was huge, with that incredible view she'd seen from the hallway. Shelves full of books and awards and furniture that looked like it came from a magazine. "Please, sit down." Daniel gestured to one of the chairs across from his desk. Claire sat. Her heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. "Mr. Hartley, I brought the money. I can pay you back right now." She pulled out the envelope and put it on his desk. He looked at it but didn't touch it. "I told you not to worry about it." "I know, but I can't just... I need to pay you back. It's not right." He leaned back in his chair, studying her with that intense look he had. "I looked up your employee file this weekend." Of course he did. Claire felt her face getting hot again. "You've worked here for 3 years. Perfect attendance. Never late, not once. Highest customer satisfaction scores in your entire department. And according to your record, you're taking online business classes at night." He paused. "Why are you wasting your time in the call center?" That was not at all what she'd expected him to say. "I'm sorry? You're clearly capable of more than answering phone calls about password resets. So why haven't you applied for other positions in the company?" Claire didn't know how to answer that. The real answer was that positions above the call center required experience she didn't have, or degrees she hadn't finished, or connections she'd never made. The call center was entry level. You needed a high school diploma and the ability to deal with angry people. That was it. "I guess I never thought I'd get them," she said honestly. "Interesting." Daniel opened a folder on his desk. "My executive assistant quit 3 months ago. Since then, I've interviewed 14 people for the position. All of them had impressive resumes, MBAs from good schools, years of experience. Every single one of them lasted less than a week. I don't understand what this has to do with me. I'm offering you the job." Claire stared at him. "What, executive assistant? You'd work directly with me, manage my schedule, handle communications, attend meetings, help with projects. The pay is $85,000 a year with full benefits, including health insurance that covers dependents." He said it like he was reading off a grocery list, like he hadn't just offered her more than triple what she made now. "This is because of what happened at the store." Claire said slowly, "You feel bad for me. This is because I need someone competent who shows up and does their job well. Your record says you're that person." He leaned forward slightly. "But I'll be honest with you. I'm apparently difficult to work for. I expect things done right the first time. I work long hours and I'll expect you to be available. The last assistant called me a robot with no social skills. The one before that said working for me was like being in the military. So this isn't charity. This is me taking a chance on someone who might actually last more than a week." Claire's mind was spinning. $85,000 a year. Health insurance for her and Mia. That would change everything. They could move to a better apartment. She could stop lying awake at night doing math in her head, trying to figure out which bill to pay first. Mia could do that field trip and every other field trip after it. But working directly for Daniel Hartley? The billionaire CEO who everyone said was intimidating and demanding? Who'd just seen her at her absolute lowest point? "Why me?" she asked. "Really? Out of everyone in this company, why me?" He was quiet for a moment, like he was trying to figure out how to explain something complicated. "Because you show up even when things are hard. You do good work even when no one's watching. And you take online classes at night after working all day because you're trying to build something better for yourself." He picked up her file. "That tells me more about you than any resume with fancy degrees ever could." Claire looked down at her hands. This felt surreal. On Friday night, she couldn't afford groceries. Now it was Monday morning and she was sitting in the CEO's office being offered a job that would change her life. Things like this didn't happen to people like her. "I don't have an MBA," she said. "I don't have experience as an executive assistant. I don't even know what half of that job involves. You'll learn. I'd rather train someone smart who wants to work than deal with another person who thinks their degree means they don't have to try. Can I think about it?" "No." He said it simply, matter of fact. "I need an answer now. I have meetings starting in an hour and I need to know if I'm training someone today or interviewing candidate number 15 tomorrow." This was crazy. This was absolutely crazy. But Claire thought about Mia asking why they couldn't go to the movies like her friends did. About the stack of bills on her kitchen counter. About the feeling of that card declining over and over at the store. About spending the next 10 years in a cubicle taking the same calls over and over. Okay, she heard herself say. Yes, I'll take it. Good. Daniel stood up and held out his hand. She stood too and shook it. His grip was firm and professional. You start today. First thing we're doing is going through my calendar for the next month, because it's apparently a disaster. Angela will help you move your things from downstairs. Your new office is the one next to this one. I get an office? You're my executive assistant. Of course you get an office. Claire picked up the envelope of cash from his desk. What do I do with this? Whatever you want. Buy your daughter something nice. Take yourself to dinner. I don't need it. She stood there holding the envelope, looking at this man who was basically a stranger but who'd just changed everything for her in the span of a weekend. Thank you, Mr. Hartley, for all of it. It's just Daniel, he said. And you can thank me by not quitting after 3 days like everyone else. As Claire left his office, her head spinning, she had no idea that the hardest part wasn't going to be the work. It was going to be dealing with everyone else's opinions about how she got there. The first week was brutal. Not because of Daniel, surprisingly, but because of everything else. The job itself was actually manageable once Claire figured out the system. Daniel's calendar was a mess, sure, but it was just a puzzle that needed solving. Meetings stacked on top of each other, conference calls scheduled during lunch, reminders for things that had already happened. She spent the first 3 days just cleaning it up and making it functional. Daniel was exactly what everyone said he'd be, demanding, focused, all business all the time. He didn't do small talk. He expected things done immediately and done right. When she made a mistake on her second day, mixing up the time zones for a call with investors in Singapore, he didn't yell. He just looked at her and said, "Fix it now," which was somehow worse than yelling. But he also noticed when she stayed late to finish something. He brought coffee without being asked, always made exactly right. He remembered that she had a daughter and never scheduled anything past 5:30 without checking first. And when she reorganized his entire filing system over the weekend because the old one made no sense, he actually said thank you. The real problem was everyone else. The whispers started on day 2. Claire would walk into the break room and conversations would stop. People stared. She heard the word lucky a lot, always said in a tone that made it clear they didn't mean lucky in a good way. Rachel from accounting was the first one to say something directly. They were in the elevator together, and Rachel smiled in that way that wasn't really friendly at all. So how exactly did you get promoted from the call center straight to the 5th floor? That's quite a jump. Claire kept her eyes on the floor numbers. I was offered the position and I took it. Right, but Daniel Hartley doesn't just offer positions to random call center workers. There must be some story there. There was a story. Just not the one Rachel was clearly implying. But Claire didn't feel like explaining how her boss had seen her card get declined at the grocery store. I guess he thought I could do the job. Rachel got off on the 3rd floor, and as the doors closed, Claire heard her saying something to someone else that included the words ridiculous and obviously. It got worse over the next few weeks. Someone started a rumor that Claire and Daniel were dating. Then someone else upgraded that rumor to say she'd manipulated him somehow. Then it became that she was only qualified to answer phones and Daniel was just being charitable, which was ridiculous because he was literally the least charitable person she'd ever met when it came to work performance. Claire tried to ignore it, but it was hard when people looked at her like she didn't deserve to be there, like she hadn't earned it. Even though she was working 12-hour days trying to prove herself, learning everything as fast as she could, making Daniel's life easier in ways the previous 14 assistants apparently couldn't manage. About a month in, Daniel asked her to attend a board meeting to take notes. Claire had never been to a board meeting. She didn't even know what board meetings really involved, but she showed up with her laptop and sat in the corner of the huge conference room while Daniel and a bunch of older men in expensive suits talked about quarterly earnings and expansion strategies. Halfway through, one of the board members, a guy named Richard who wore a suit that probably cost more than Claire's rent, asked a question about customer retention rates. Daniel started to answer, but then stopped and looked at Claire. Actually, Claire, you worked in customer service. What's your take on this? Every person in that room turned to look at her. Claire felt her mouth go dry. What was he doing? She wasn't supposed to talk in these meetings. She was just supposed to take notes and be invisible. She cleared her throat. From the calls I used to take, most people left because the software was confusing, not because it didn't work. They'd get frustrated and switch to a competitor. So maybe the issue isn't the product itself, it's how we're teaching people to use it. Richard looked at her like she'd just suggested the company start doing business on the moon. We have tutorial videos on the website. Right, but nobody watches those. They're too long and too technical. Most people just want to know how to do the specific thing they're trying to do right now, not learn the entire program. Daniel leaned back in his chair, listening. What would you suggest? Maybe short clips? Like under a minute each, showing one simple task at a time, and have them pop up in the program itself when someone looks stuck, not buried on some website page nobody can find. The room was silent for a moment. Then Daniel nodded slowly. That's not a bad idea. Richard, have the tech team look into that. Richard didn't look happy about taking direction that came from Claire, but he wrote something down in his notebook. The meeting moved on, and Claire went back to being invisible, her heart still pounding from speaking up in front of all those important people. After the meeting, as everyone filed out, Daniel caught her arm. Good insight in there. I probably shouldn't have said anything. Why not? You had a valid point based on actual experience. That's more valuable than half the theoretical nonsense the board usually discusses. Claire looked at him, this man who'd gone from paying for her groceries to asking her opinion in board meetings in the span of a month. People are saying things about us, about how I got this job. Let them talk, it bothers me. They think I didn't earn this. Daniel's expression hardened. Do you think you earned it? Claire thought about the hours she'd put in, the systems she'd learned, the fires she'd put out, the way Daniel's schedule actually worked now instead of being a daily disaster. Yeah, I do. Then their opinions don't matter. He started walking toward his office, and she followed. When I started this company, people said I'd fail within a year. When I made my first $1 million, they said I got lucky. When I made my first $1 billion, they said I sold out. There will always be people who have opinions about your success. Let them waste their energy on that while you waste yours on actually doing the work. It was the most he'd ever said to her about anything that wasn't directly work-related. Claire nodded, but it still bothered her, especially when it affected Mia. The other day, one of the moms at school pickup had made a comment about Claire's new car, a used sedan that was way better than her old one, but nothing fancy. Must be nice to have such a generous boss, the woman had said, with that same tone Rachel in accounting used. That night, Claire was working late again. Daniel was still in his office, which wasn't unusual. The man basically lived there. Around 7, she finished updating a presentation he needed for the morning and knocked on his door. It's done. I'm heading out. He looked up from his computer. It's 7 already? Yeah, I need to pick up Mia from my sister's place. She's been there since after school. You do that every day. Drop her at your sister's in the morning, work, pick her up at night. Kelly lives close to the school and she works from home. It's easier than putting Mia in after-school care, which was only half true. The other half was that after-school care cost money she was still trying to save. Daniel was quiet for a moment, doing that thing where he looked like he was calculating something. The company has a child care center on the 2nd floor. Did you know that? Yeah, but it's mostly for the executives, and you're an executive assistant. You qualify. It's free for employees, includes after-school pickup from local schools, homework help, dinner. Mia could stay there until you're ready to leave. Claire hadn't even considered that she might qualify for something like that. Are you sure? I'll email HR tonight. She can start tomorrow if you want. It was such a simple thing, but it meant Claire wouldn't have to rush out every day at 5:30, worrying about being late. Wouldn't have to feel guilty about imposing on her sister. Wouldn't have to see that look on Mia's face when she was the last kid waiting to be picked up. Thank you, Claire said quietly. It's a company benefit you're entitled to. Don't thank me for following policy. But they both knew he'd specifically made sure she knew about it, just like he'd specifically asked her opinion in the board meeting. Just like he'd been specifically not treating her like the charity case everyone seemed to think she was. Walking to her car that night, Claire realized something. She'd stopped feeling embarrassed about what happened at the grocery store, not because it wasn't humiliating, but because everything that came after proved it was just one bad moment in a life that was actually getting better. She'd earned this job. She was good at it. And maybe, just maybe, she was starting to believe she deserved to be there. 3 months into the job, Claire felt like she'd finally found her rhythm. She knew Daniel's preferences, could predict what he'd need before he asked for it, and had basically become the person who kept his entire professional life running smoothly. The board had even implemented her idea about the tutorial videos, and customer retention had already improved by 12%. Daniel mentioned that in a meeting, giving her credit in front of everyone. Small victories. Mia loved the childcare center. She'd made friends, actually looked forward to the homework help sessions, and had stopped asking why they couldn't afford things like her classmates. Because now they could. Claire had moved them into a bigger apartment, bought Mia new clothes that actually fit, and for the first time in years, wasn't staying awake at night doing math in her head about bills. But the rumors hadn't stopped. If anything, they'd gotten more creative. Now people were saying Daniel was grooming her for some higher position, or that she was manipulating him, or, the most popular theory, that they were definitely sleeping together and just hiding it really well. That last one bothered Claire the most because lately, she'd caught herself thinking about Daniel in ways that definitely weren't professional. It was hard not to. They spent more time together than she spent with anyone else. She knew how he took his coffee, that he forgot to eat lunch when he was focused on something, that he had a subtle sense of humor most people missed. She knew he called his mom every Sunday night, that he'd rather work through problems alone than ask for help, and that under all that intensity was someone who actually cared a lot about doing things right. And sometimes, she'd catch him looking at her in meetings with an expression she couldn't quite read, or he'd stay late on nights when he didn't really need to, asking about her day, about Mia, about things that had nothing to do with work. Once he'd brought Mia a book from the store because Claire had mentioned her daughter liked reading. It was a small thing, but it made Claire's heart do something complicated. She knew she needed to stop thinking about him like that. He was her boss, a billionaire, someone completely out of her league in every possible way, and she'd worked too hard to let some impossible crush mess up the best job she'd ever had. Then everything fell apart on a Tuesday night. Claire was at home, had just finished helping Mia with her math homework, when her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Is this Claire, Mia's mom?" A woman's voice, urgent and professional. Claire's blood went cold. "Yes, what's wrong?" "This is County General Hospital. Your daughter was brought in about 20 minutes ago. She collapsed at school during aftercare." The rest of the conversation was a blur. Something about breathing problems, emergency room, needed to come right away. Claire grabbed her keys with shaking hands, called her sister to meet her there, and drove to the hospital, going probably 20 miles over the speed limit. Mia was in a bed in the ER, an oxygen mask on her face, looking so small and scared. Claire's heart broke into about 1,000,000 pieces. The doctor, a tired-looking woman in scrubs, explained that Mia had asthma, a severe attack, triggered by some new cleaning products the school had started using. She was stable now, but she needed to see a specialist and get on better medication. They had her on a breathing treatment, and she'd need to stay overnight for observation. "I didn't know she had asthma," Claire said, holding Mia's hand. "She's never had problems breathing before. It can develop at any age. Sometimes one bad attack is the first sign." The doctor pulled up something on her computer. "I'm going to refer you to Dr. Patterson. He's excellent with pediatric asthma. You'll need to see him within the next week or two." "Is he covered by insurance?" The doctor glanced at her screen. "Dr. Patterson doesn't take insurance, unfortunately. He's private practice. The initial consultation is $2,000, and depending on what tests he wants to run, it could be another $3,000 to $5,000 total." Claire felt like she'd been punched in the stomach. $5,000. She'd been saving money, sure, but not that much. She had maybe $3,000 in her account, and that was supposed to be for emergencies like car repairs, or if they needed to move suddenly. This was an emergency too, but a different kind. The kind where her daughter's health was on the line. Are there other specialists? Ones that take insurance? There are, but the waiting list is usually 3 to 4 months. Given the severity of your daughter's attack, I'd really recommend seeing Dr. Patterson sooner. 3 to 4 months. Anything could happen in that time. Another attack. A worse attack. Claire felt tears starting and forced them back. Not here. Not in front of Mia, who was already scared enough. After the doctor left, Claire sat next to Mia's bed holding her hand, trying to figure out what to do. She could call Kelly, but her sister had her own money problems. She could try to get a loan, but her credit wasn't great after years of barely making ends meet. She could... Mom, I'm sorry, Mia whispered through the oxygen mask. Baby, you have nothing to be sorry for. I made you worried, and now we have to pay for the doctor. Don't you worry about that, I'll figure it out, I always do. But sitting there at 2 a.m. while Mia finally fell asleep, Claire wasn't sure how she was going to figure this one out. She'd just started getting ahead, just started feeling like maybe things were going to be okay. And now this. Her phone buzzed. A text from Daniel. Are you okay? You're not on the schedule tomorrow, but wanted to make sure. Claire stared at the message. It was 2 a.m. Why was he awake? She started typing a response about how she was fine, just had a personal thing come up, would be back the next day. But her fingers wouldn't cooperate. Before she knew what she was doing, she was calling him. He answered on the first ring. Claire? What's wrong? And then everything just came out. About Mia in the hospital, about the asthma, about the specialist who cost $5,000 and didn't take insurance, about feeling like she was right, back where she started, one emergency away from everything falling apart. She wasn't crying exactly, but her voice was doing that thing where it shook and she couldn't quite catch her breath. Where are you? Daniel asked. County General, room 247. I'm coming. You don't need to, but he'd already hung up. Claire sat there holding her phone, wondering what she'd just done. She shouldn't have called him. He was her boss, not her friend, not someone she should be dumping her problems on at 2 a.m. 20 minutes later, Daniel walked through the door of Mia's hospital room. He was still in his work clothes, like he'd come straight from the office, which he probably had, because of course he was still at the office at 2 a.m. He looked at Mia sleeping in the bed, then at Claire, and his expression softened in a way she'd never seen before. He sat down in the chair next to hers without saying anything. Just sat there present like that was what she needed. I'm sorry I called, Claire said quietly. I shouldn't have bothered you with this. Stop apologizing. But Claire. He turned to look at her fully. Do you think the only reason I gave you this job was because I felt sorry for you? She didn't know how to answer that. It was a question she'd asked herself about 100 times. I gave you the job because you're good at it, because you're smart and capable, and you work harder than anyone I've ever hired. He paused. But somewhere along the way, you became more than just my assistant. You became someone I actually care about. You and Mia both. Claire's heart was doing that complicated thing again, but bigger now. Daniel, I know what people are saying about us, about how you got here, and I know it bothers you because you want to prove you earned everything yourself. He leaned forward. But here's the thing. Accepting help doesn't mean you didn't earn it. It just means you're smart enough to recognize when someone's offering something real. I can't let you pay for the specialist. I can't keep letting you save me. What if I'm not saving you? What if I'm just helping someone I care about because I can? Claire looked at him, really looked at him, and saw something in his eyes she'd been trying to ignore for months. People will talk even more if you do this. Let them talk. I stopped caring what people thought about me a long time ago. He reached over and took her hand. The question is, do you care? Because if you do, I'll back off. I'll keep this professional. I'll find a way to help with the medical bills that doesn't involve me directly. But if you don't care, if you're feeling even a fraction of what I'm feeling, then maybe it's time to stop pretending this is just a boss and employee relationship. Claire's mind was racing. Her daughter was in a hospital bed. She was exhausted and scared and overwhelmed. And her boss, who she'd been trying not to have feelings for, was basically confessing that he had feelings for her. This was possibly the worst timing in the history of timing, but it was also maybe the most honest moment she'd had with anyone in years. I'm feeling it, she whispered. I've been feeling it for a while now. Daniel smiled, actually smiled, something he almost never did. Good. That's good. But I still can't let you just pay for everything. How about this? I pay for the specialist. You pay me back by having dinner with me. One dinner. A real one, not working late and ordering takeout at the office. That's not a fair trade at all. I'm a billionaire. Nothing about my life is fair. But I'm choosing to use that for something good right now, so just let me. Claire wanted to argue more. Her pride demanded it. But her daughter needed help, and Daniel was offering it in a way that felt less like charity and more like someone who genuinely cared. And maybe that was what she needed to learn. That accepting help from people who cared about you wasn't weakness. It was just being human. 6 months after that night in the hospital, Claire stood in front of a conference room full of executives presenting a proposal she'd spent 3 months developing. The Employee Emergency Assistance Fund, a program that would help workers facing unexpected financial crises, the kind of situations she'd been in not that long ago. Medical bills, car repairs, emergency childcare, the things that could destroy someone's life when they were already living paycheck to paycheck. She'd done her research, interviewed employees who'd struggled, analyzed the costs and benefits, put together a comprehensive plan that would actually make a difference. And now she was presenting it to the board, with Daniel sitting at the head of the table watching her with that expression she'd learned meant he was impressed, but would never say it out loud. The fund would be self-sustaining after the initial investment, Claire explained, clicking to her next slide. Employees can apply for emergency loans up to $5,000 to be paid back over 12 months with no interest. We've calculated that we'd need to help an average of 40 employees per year to break even. And based on our survey data, we're looking at closer to 70 who would qualify and use it. Richard, the board member who still didn't particularly like her, raised his hand. This sounds like charity. Why should the company be in the business of lending money to employees who can't manage their finances? Claire had been expecting that question. Because it's cheaper than replacing them. When an employee quits because they can't afford an emergency car repair and have no way to get to work, we lose that person and have to spend time and money training someone new. When an employee is stressed about money constantly, their productivity drops. This program isn't charity. It's an investment in keeping good people who might otherwise leave because of circumstances beyond their control. Another board member, an older woman named Patricia, nodded thoughtfully. Have you modeled the expected return on investment? Yes. If we retain even half the employees we'd otherwise lose, the program pays for itself in reduced turnover costs alone. But beyond that, we're seeing from companies that have similar programs that employee satisfaction increases, productivity goes up, and loyalty to the company strengthens. People remember when their workplace helped them through a hard time. The presentation went on for another 20 minutes. Questions, answers, pushback, more answers. When it was over, the board voted. 7 in favor, 2 against. The program was approved. As everyone filed out of the conference room, Daniel caught Claire's arm. Well done. Richard still hates me. Richard hates everyone under 60 who wasn't born rich. Don't take it personally. He lowered his voice. Dinner tonight? To celebrate? Can't. Mia has a sleepover at Kelly's house and I promised I'd help set up. Tomorrow then. Claire smiled. They'd been doing this dance for months now. Stolen dinners when they could manage it. Carefully professional at work. Nobody knowing except Claire's sister and Daniel's mother, who he'd insisted on Claire meeting because apparently that's what you did when you were serious about someone. And they were serious. Despite the weirdness of him being her boss and a billionaire and all the other complications. Despite people still whispering about how she got her position. Despite the fact that her life 6 months ago had been completely different. And sometimes she still couldn't quite believe this was real. That evening, Claire picked up Mia from the childcare center. Her daughter was healthy now, her asthma under control thanks to Dr. Patterson and the medication he'd prescribed. She'd grown 2 inches and was obsessed with a book series about dragons that Daniel kept buying her new copies of, before Claire even knew they'd been released. Mom, can we stop and get pizza before we go to Aunt Kelly's? Mia asked as they walked to the car. Sure, sweetie. In the car, Mia was quiet for a moment, then said, Are you and Mr. Hartley dating? Claire nearly swerved into the next lane. What? Why would you ask that? Katie's mom works at the company too. She said people are talking about it. And you smile at your phone a lot more now. And he brings me books. Mia looked at her with that too smart for 8 years old expression. So are you? There was no point in lying. Mia would figure it out eventually. Yeah, we are. Is that okay with you? Mia thought about it seriously. Is he nice to you? Very nice. Does he make you happy? He does. Then it's okay. But if he's mean to you, I'll tell Aunt Kelly and she'll beat him up. Claire laughed. Deal. Later that night, after setting up the sleepover and leaving Mia with Kelly, Claire went home to her apartment. The bigger one. The one she could actually afford now. She was tired, but in a good way. The kind of tired that came from doing work that mattered. Her phone buzzed. Daniel. Conference call canceled. I'm free if you are. Claire smiled and texted back. Come over. He showed up 40 minutes later with Thai food and that slight awkwardness he always had outside of work, like he wasn't quite sure how to be a regular person. Claire had learned to find it endearing. They ate on her couch, talking about the board meeting, about Mia's sleepover, about nothing important. It was nice, normal. The kind of normal Claire had never thought she'd have with someone like him. I've been thinking about something, Daniel said after they'd finished eating. The program you presented today. It was good, really good, thanks. I'm excited to see it actually help people. You should do more of that. Development strategy, not just assisting me. Claire looked at him. What are you saying? I'm saying that in 6 months you've proven you're capable of a lot more than managing my calendar. I want to create a new position. Director of Employee Programs. You'd oversee the emergency fund, develop new initiatives, work directly with HR and the executive team. He paused. It would be a promotion. Significant raise. Your own department. Daniel. Before you say this is special treatment, let me stop you. I'm offering this because you earned it. You developed this program entirely on your own. You did the research, built the case, presented it to the board, and got it approved. That's exactly what a director-level employee does. People will say you're only promoting me because we're together. People are always going to say something. 6 months ago, they said you slept your way into being my assistant. Now they'll say you're sleeping your way into a director position. In 6 more months, when you're running this department successfully, they'll find something else to say. He took her hand. You can spend your whole life trying to prove things to people who've already decided not to believe in you. Or you can just do good work and let that speak for itself. Claire leaned back against the couch, thinking. A year ago, she couldn't afford groceries, couldn't imagine a future that wasn't just scraping by. Always one emergency away from disaster. And now she was sitting in a nice apartment with a man who wanted to promote her to director, having already launched a program that would help people in the exact situation she'd been in. Okay, she said. Yes, I'll take the position. Good. Daniel smiled, that rare, full smile that made him look years younger. Though this does create a problem. What problem? You won't technically be my assistant anymore, which means the rule about not dating employees you directly supervise doesn't apply. We've been breaking that rule for months. True. But now we can break it publicly. Claire laughed. Is that what you want? To go public? Eventually. When you're ready. There's no rush. He pulled her closer. I'm not going anywhere. And sitting there on her couch, Claire realized she believed him. Not because he'd saved her with money or job opportunities, but because over the past months he'd shown her who he really was. Someone who worked hard because he cared about doing things right. Someone who listened when she talked. Someone who brought her daughter books and remembered her coffee order, and stayed up late at the hospital even when he didn't have to. The next morning, Claire woke up early and checked her bank account on her phone, something she still did out of habit from years of barely getting by. The number that stared back at her was healthy, stable, safe. She could handle an emergency now without falling apart. She thought about that night at the grocery store, how humiliated she'd felt when her card declined, how she'd wanted to disappear, how she'd never imagined that embarrassing moment would lead to everything that came after. Sometimes the worst moments open doors to the best things. Sometimes accepting help isn't weakness but the beginning of something better. Sometimes the person who saves you ends up being saved right back. Claire got up, made coffee, and started getting ready for work. She had a new program to launch, a team to build, and a future to create. Not because someone had rescued her, but because she'd been brave enough to accept help when she needed it and then turned that help into something meaningful. Her payment had failed that night. But in failing, it had led her exactly where she needed to be. 3 months later, the Employee Emergency Assistance Fund had helped 62 people. Mia was thriving in school. Daniel and Claire went public with their relationship at the company holiday party, And while some people still whispered, most didn't care. Claire's program was working, and that was what mattered. On a random Tuesday, Claire was in her office, now labeled Director of Employee Programs, when someone knocked. A young woman stood in the doorway looking nervous. "Hi, I'm sorry to bother you. I'm from the data entry department. My name is Jen." She twisted her hands together. "I heard about the emergency fund. My car broke down and I don't know how I'm going to get to work. I was going to quit because I can't afford to fix it. But someone said maybe you could help." Claire smiled and gestured to the chair across from her desk. "Sit down. Let's talk about it." As Jen explained her situation, Claire remembered sitting in a different chair months ago, feeling hopeless and lost. And she thought about how one moment of crisis had somehow led to her being able to sit here now and actually help someone else through theirs. The cycle continued. People helping people. Moments of failure turning into opportunities for growth. And Claire, who'd once stood at a grocery store checkout unable to pay for food, was now in a position to make sure others didn't have to feel that same shame alone. Her payment had failed. But in the end, everything had worked out exactly right.